What's going on, guys? It is Ty Action Gaming here. Today is January 9th, 2021, and let's get into just straight into the big news of the week. All right, first we're going to go off with Deshaun Watson possibly leaving the Texans. Obviously, the Texans haven't been the greatest host to Watson recently, lying to him about telling they would take some of his advice on the coaching hires that or coaching and general manager hires the Texans were going to make, and they didn't notify Watson. As Watson quoted on Twitter that some things never change. Obviously, that's not a good thing when you're talking about your star franchise quarterback that you just signed this past offseason to an absolutely massive deal. You don't want to disappoint him already, and that seems like what the Texans are doing with this, lying to Watson, telling him they were going to, like I said, take his advice on any sort of coaching/GM hires, and they didn't even let him know that Nick Caserio from the Patriots was going to be the hire for GM, and that's just obviously not great. I mean, they're lying to Watson, and they're really not helping him out because obviously the DeAndre Hopkins trade, which is another thing they didn't tell him that was about to go down, and Hopkins being a Clemson Tiger as well as Deshaun, they were good buddies. Not only was he Deshaun's number one target, you're losing basically one of his best friends, his buddy, and that's failures so far with the Texans, with Deshaun Watson kind of wasting his career so far and not helping him out whatsoever. So, I mean, there's really nothing else you could say on that than what the Texans have failed Deshaun Watson, and he has every right to want to leave with them lying to him and, like I said, not helping him out whatsoever, and if anything, hurting him more. All right, so now we move on to our next bit of major news, which broke yesterday morning, which was Urban Meyer making the jump to the NFL, possibly. He had a meeting with the Jaguars just yesterday about possibly making the jump to the NFL. He's a three-time FBS champion. I think everyone knows who Urban Meyer is, with Ohio State and Florida being his biggest accomplishments there, with Tim Tebow in Florida, and you had all his favorite quarterbacks at OSU that never made it big in the NFL, but he's worked in college. Great motivator, great recruiter, but it's going to be interesting to see if the Urban Meyer coaching works in the NFL with how his style of coaching is. Being a college coach, it's a motivator and someone that always gets the best players through recruiting. It's going to be interesting to see when he takes over a Jag roster. It's not that great. But Urban Meyer isn't uncontested in this job. He was one of four interviewees between Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator for the 49ers, who's been looking for a job for a while, Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, who's been a guy that's been deprived of a job for a while when he's really deserved one, and Raheem Morris, which is the interim head coach of the Atlanta Falcons after Dan Quinn was fired. And he's done a pretty good job. Hasn't been able to really finish out games as a head coach. We can't really blame him from what he was kind of just forced into that position in the middle of the season, so that's kind of a tough spot for him. But he's done well as the Falcons head coach, and definitely think he will end up getting a job somewhere and getting an opportunity somewhere, if not this year, sometime in the future. And now we move on to some news that broke last night, which was Jim Harbaugh's extension was finally signed after weeks. You heard that he was close. He was going to sign it this Monday, going to sign it this Friday. Just all sorts of stuff that it was always quote-unquote close, but it took forever for that signing, which definitely didn't help Michigan whatsoever when it came into recruits and finding a new staff. But let's get into the contract and what it is. Obviously, this is a Michigan contract. This is going to be great for Michigan. They get to cut his pay in half. Salary's going down from $8 million to $4 million a year, which is a big cut down, saving up $4 million each year, and definitely that's going to hopefully go to finding some good coaches during this offseason. And like I said, definitely a good Michigan deal with a lower buyout for Michigan, which is good if they finally decide that maybe his mediocrity isn't helping out whatsoever. Then they can buy out of his contract easier and not have to unload multiple trucks of cash to the Harbaugh residence just to fire him. It's going to be an easier way to get rid of him. But now we're going to go how he can make that $4 million back that that he lost, which is smart. Like I said, this is a Michigan contract, and this is put in by incentives. If he wins the Big Ten Coach of the Year, he'll get $50K. The National Coach of the Year, $75K. Big East champions outright is $500K. Big Ten champs in general is $1 million. The New Year, if he makes a New Year's Six Bowl, $200K. A CFP semifinal, he gets $500K. And the CFP champion, he gets $1 million. She can make back all of that money within a year easily, but it's, well, I wouldn't say easily, but if all the dominoes fall into place, he can make his money back that he's losing. So I think that's definitely a smart move by Michigan, and definitely more getting Harbaugh to sign. Harbaugh just he's gonna have to clean up his act in Michigan if he wants things to work out and make that money back that he's obviously losing for being mediocre so far at Michigan. And now we're going to move on to the section which is actions, opinions, and this is going to be I'll take 2 or 3 situations and just throw out my opinion on them in sports. So first, let's go right off the contract extension and explaining what it is for Jim Harbaugh to my opinion on his extension. Obviously, as a Michigan fan, I got some pretty strong opinions on it, and I think I think it was time to let him go. I mean, you should have let Jim Harbaugh go chase an NFL job, because he has laced Michigan with mediocrity since he's came in. Obviously, when you came in, we thought he was going to change the world. He's going to change the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. He's going to flip everything around, and he's done absolutely everything but that. He's been mediocre at best. He's losing to Michigan State in his 6th year, and a bad Michigan State team. This isn't the Michigan State team that was in the playoffs. This is just a terrible, terrible Michigan State team that lost to Rutgers this year. He was the coach that almost lost to that said Rutgers team too later on in the year, took them to overtime and got some of that Rutgers bad luck to get the win, and he almost blew that game, like I said, as well. Just wasn't a great coach this year, coming off a 2-4 season. That's why this contract just doesn't make any sense. And if we're going to go to the pinnacle of mediocrity that he's brought, there's been no Big Ten championships, no Big Ten East championships, and 0 wins versus Ohio State, which is the big one. If you come in as a Michigan head coach or an Ohio State head coach, you should have one goal. If you can't get anything else, your one goal should be is you beat Michigan or you beat Ohio State. That should be your goal. And I think coaches should be judged off of that. Like Luke Fickell, now coach at UC, who's obviously done a fantastic job there. He got 1 year as the interim head coach of Ohio State after they had some violations, NCAA violations. He was getting put in a bad situation. He lost to Michigan. He was out in a year. So you need to, as Michigan, take on your program if you want to catch up to Ohio State as the same way. If you have a guy, maybe not just his first year, that's a bit overkill. I think Luke Fickell deserved a better chance there. But if he's his first 2 or 3 years and he's not beaten Ohio State yet, that's something that should just be a fireable offense. You don't if you want to catch up to Ohio State, that's what it's going to take, is holding accountability for that specific game. And so far, Michigan hasn't been able to do that. But now, here's the kind of bright side of the Harbaugh extension. You're going to have new coaches. They're cleaning house there at Michigan, hopefully trying to fix everything up for next season. So that's going to be sort of fun thing to look into. So first, you're going to have a DC who's basically already signed is Mike Macdonald. He's a linebackers coach from the Ravens, obviously connections with John Harbaugh, his brother, who is the Ravens head coach. Getting some good words on Mike Macdonald from John, and it's going to be interesting to see him come in. He's a young guy. He's been coaching for about 7 years. Hasn't had play calling experience, and this will be his first time. So I think if you're going to bring him in, you're going to have to surround him with defensive coaches that are very experienced, have been around a while, so they can help him develop the players on defense and get better as a play caller. Definitely, he has a lot of upside. He's definitely an up-and-coming coach with a lot of potential, and hopefully seeing Lamar Jackson in practices and structuring the defense around trying to stop that in practice, he'll be able to stop those quarterbacks that are running around, those spread offenses, those just crazy new offenses that are coming out. Hopefully he could adapt to all that new stuff as the new DC of Michigan. Obviously, both of Harbaugh's defensive coordinators before this at Michigan have been guys that are very experienced, and Don Brown specifically had many years as a coach and even coached baseball for a little bit. He did everything. Obviously, didn't end up working out with his blitz on every play scheme, but Mike McDonald definitely has a chance as the younger guy to maybe step up and make a difference there at the University of Michigan. And now for the offensive coordinator. This is just an opinion. This isn't signed in place by me. I think you need to bring in Joe Moorhead to be a co-offensive coordinator with Josh Gaddis. Josh Gaddis by himself obviously isn't working. He hasn't done well as a play caller, but you can't entirely blame him for that. He's a very young guy. This was his first 2 years at Michigan. Has been his first 2 years play calling. I think he could definitely use some help with someone like Joe Moorhead, who's been in the coaching business since 1998. He's been a head coach when he was at Mississippi State, and he knows how everything runs. He's been around for a while. He was the offensive coordinator at Oregon for 1 year of Justin Herbert, so he definitely had to see all that and help out with Herbert in his development. He's done a great job at Oregon this year. Obviously, the decreased quarterback play kind of cut him in the knees a little bit, but he's definitely still a great coordinator, and I think someone that Michigan could really use to help Josh Gaddis with the play calling. Like I said, he's experienced, and I think he'd be a great guy to add along with Gaddis with his experience. All right, now moving on from my anger and opinions with that subject, we move on to Carson Wentz, who I think is going to be a very interesting thing to look at over this offseason, and whether or not he wants to stay in Philly or if he wants to leave. And I think he needs to leave Philly. He's got a fractured relationship with Doug Peterson, the head coach there. They just you could tell they're not in sync like they were in Carson Wentz's almost MVP season, obviously cut short by the knee injury. I think Nick Foles plagues him because Nick Foles took the team that Carson Wentz got to the playoffs and took them to not to the national championship, to the Super Bowl, and won the Super Bowl. And I think that kind of will always plague Carson Wentz, that he never was able to get it done, and Nick Foles was, and he's so beloved by Philadelphia for winning that game. I mean, they even have a statue of Nick Foles outside the Philly stadium, which obviously going to work every day to see your backup who won the Super Bowl with your team is probably definitely an interesting experience for Carson Wentz, and probably doesn't help at all with his development there in Philly. And I don't think he could take it anymore. I think he's just done with Philadelphia, and I think he needs a change of scenery. I think he could definitely get back to that Carson Wentz form, MVP form that he was in, but he needs to find the right place to go. So I think before he wants to go anywhere, he's going to have to restructure that contract. I don't think anyone in their right minds would want to take the contract that he has in Philly. Obviously, they thought he was going to be a superstar, and hasn't really turned out that way in Philadelphia. So I think he's going to need to restructure that contract in Philly first before they could organize a trade for him and move him. But I have two places where I think he could definitely go in and be a good fit right away. And I think that first is going to be New England. Bill Belichick, the Patriot way, is something that kind of would force Carson Wentz into that more like routine work ethic that he really needs to get back on track. And from all signs that he's a guy that's like very free-willed and wants to do what he wants to do. I think Bill Belichick could force him into the Patriot way. I think he's going to have a great fan base behind him in New England that's going to support him. But I think the one thing that's going to be bad is as he's in Nick Foles' shadow, after Nick Foles won the Super Bowl, I think he'll also be in Tom Brady's shadow in New England, because obviously that's going to stick around for a while, is what Tom Brady left in New England and how you compare to Tom Brady for that fan base. But I think besides that, he could definitely get love there. I think Bill Belichick could really help him out and just helping him be comfortable and get back to that old Carson Wentz that we saw would have been the MVP easy if he didn't get injured. And now we move on to the second option, which I think would be the best option, is the Colts. You reunite him with his offensive coordinator from the year that he would have won MVP, and Frank Reich. I think the Colts need someone like him. Obviously, Philip Rivers is getting really old. I mean, who knows if Philip Rivers is going to, one, be in Indianapolis, and two, if he's even going to be playing next year. So I think the Colts will definitely need a quarterback like him and someone they can trust, because they're going to be picking later on. They're not going to get their pick of who they think is the best quarterback in the draft. They're just picking too late to do that. So I think getting someone like Carson Wentz and trading for him would definitely be something big on their list. I think Frank Reich would love to have him back. And I think you have no pressure from a previous great. Peyton Manning has been long gone from there, obviously. Andrew Luck never really lived up to the hype because of injuries and just never getting the right place, right time with the Colts, and Andrew Luck there. And then obviously Philip Rivers is not a great quarterback of all time in the Colts uniform. He's kind of a transition guy. And he's done well in that job. Obviously the Colts are in the playoffs. They're a 10-win team, but they're obviously going to need to move on from him. He's too old to keep around as a franchise guy. So Carson Wentz won't have this pressure, won't have this standard that's always looking over his shoulder that was Nick Foles, or if he went to New England, that would be Tom Brady. He would just be there to build himself with someone that he trusts in Frank Reich, and I think that can only help him. All right, now we're moving on to the final section of today's show, and that is the playoff predictions, obviously happening today and tomorrow for the Super Wild Card round for the NFL. And let's get into the first matchup, which is Colts versus Bills. Josh Allen is just playing too well right now. The Bills are the hottest team in the NFL. The Chiefs are, if you want to look at the Chiefs, they're winning too close games, and the Bills are just blowing everyone out. Right now they are so hot, and there's no one that's in this league that is hotter with them. Green Bay would be the closest, but they're not. I don't think they're better than the Bills right now. Josh Allen playing his best football with Stephon Diggs on the outside. So Bills won that game. Now moving on to Rams versus Seahawks. Without a healthy Goff, which it looks like they won't have one. And the Rams, for the Rams, you can't go against Russell Wilson there. Rams have a really good defense, and I think that is what will keep them close. But Russell Wilson just needs to make a few big plays, have a few big drives, and that's what Russell Wilson will do. And the Seahawks will win in a semi-low scoring game. And now we move on to the Bucs Washington football team. This is the easiest pick you're gonna have to make all season. Bucs are gonna win. I mean, whoever won the NFC East, whether it was gonna be the Giants, Cowboys, or the Washington football team, they were just signing up to lose in the first round. I mean, they have a fantastic defense with a great front floor with Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, and Chase Young, obviously the second overall pick from this last season. So a fantastic front four, but you won't be able to keep up with the Bucs offense, because even though they have a great defense, the Bucs they're going to score a minimum of 21 points, and I don't know if Alex Smith could score more than 14. So I think Bucs probably score around 28, 31 points, because they're hitting their stride offensively right now. And Alex Smith, he's a gamer and he's a game manager, but he can't outrun the Bucs offense. So now we have the Browns versus Steelers. As much as I want to pick the Browns, and I think the Browns would win this game in normal circumstances, I don't think it happened this week. They've had their practice facilities shut down a bunch of times this week. They're missing Kevin Stefanski due to COVID, because Kevin Stefanski has it. And there's just too many issues with the Browns right now for them to beat the Steelers. And I think that's taking a lot of pressure off the Browns if they lose this game. But it's also kind of putting the pressure on the Steelers. The Steelers are going to be put in a pressure situation. Like, if you lose to this team, it's going to be pretty embarrassing losing the Browns twice in a row, not to mention losing to a Browns twice in a row that have had their facilities shut down, and this week without their head coach. So Steelers win in a close one, because their offense just can't put up points, so it'll be a battle of the defenses. Now, Ravens versus Titans. Ravens have been hot of late, and the Titans have regressed, but there's one thing that you have to remember. Derrick Henry owns the Ravens. He put up 194 yards last year in the playoff, and he put up 133 earlier this season in the Titans win over the Ravens. Derrick Henry will just be too much for the Ravens to handle, and he will continue to dominate. So I think the Titans are going to win this one. Now, Bears versus Saints. Second easiest pick. You're going to have all week. Because, I mean, it's Mitch Trubisky versus Drew Brees. What else do I have to say about that? So I just want to thank you guys for listening listening this week to all my playoff predictions and all my opinions, all that good stuff. And I will hope to see you guys in the next episode. And peace out.